Hello, good afternoon. Thank you very much for being here at this round table on how did you get here. It is a round table that we organize every year, and since the first edition at the festival, we consider that acknowledgement is related to knowledge, and we like young female directors to have the know-how and can have the possibility of learning how the directors of the festival have become who they are. So we have filmmakers from Netherlands, Austria, Mexico, Colombia, and we have Elena Manrique, who is a member of the programming committee since the beginning. She is one of the founders, together with me and Diego Mastrelles, and she's a great moderator. This year, she has directed her first feature film, and she's received an award at the Festival of Valladolid. Congratulations. It is never too late to start directing films, and I'll leave you here with these wonderful women.
Elena, gracias.
Okay, so Elena, you have the floor. I'm going to be moderating the round table in English. If you need interpretation, please get a headset. If you want to raise your hand. I need a headset, yes.
Before, the aim of the festival is to put in value, the different aspect of filmmaking, and we like to also have this. We try to have an input in the younger generations because we've realized that there is something very common in female psychology, or whatever you want to call it, that sometimes we have this imposter syndrome that doesn't let us be as brave or as, as daring as sometimes our male companions that have no problem to start a profession in filmmaking as easy, as they want. So I think it's important for that we talk about our own experience of how you became a filmmaker, what were the things that interest you, and what are the topics that you like to speak about in your filmography. So we are going to start by Ella. She's from Austria. She has a documentary that is called Truck, that is screening today in Cineteca. So voila, Ella, how did you become a filmmaker?
A very long time ago, actually. I started with photography, still photography. And I realized this, it was very interesting to find my own point of view, my subjective point of view. What do I see? And it's not just about the object in front of the camera, but also about myself, How do I connect to the object or the subject in front of the camera? So that was something that has interested me since an early age, like 16 or so. Until I found that video at the time, and film, I even did film on 16 millimeters, gave me the possibility not just to view or to observe, but also to hear and talk. And so this was a long time ago. Then I studied in Rome, I studied in Germany, and since 1998, I'm a freelance filmmaker. But I do documentaries, I stick to what there is and what comes out of what there is.
So do you think that documentary is your field? Do you feel sometimes that you could go to fiction? It doesn't interest you?
Yes, it does interest me, but I always think that reality has everything is there already in reality, You have to watch out, I would have to watch out, if I started a fiction film, not to be obvious or not credible, because reality is always credible. And this is the amazing thing about it. And it's always new and it's always surprising. And sometimes I think fiction films, I sit there as a spectator, I say, I know what's coming. Yes, I know what's coming. I've seen that. And so, it doesn't happen to me that often in documentary. And, my aim or don't know how to say, my approach in documentary is to be always open for coincidence, for casualties. Maybe I've got a thing in mind, but then when I come and I'm with my protagonist or the person I want to talk to, something can happen and the question goes somewhere else, or the person goes somewhere else and says something else. And this is, I've often witnessed that. It's an amazing magic thing you can't come up with. You can't make it up.
And they say that reality has many faces.
Yeah.
So I guess that depends on the angle. The reality might be perceived in a different way.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's not said that I won't do a fiction film. It's like Antonioni. I read or heard. He came to the set in the morning and talked to the actors and said, so, che facciamo? Cosa vogliamo fare? Tu che dici? No? And so I thought, God, amazing, such a master, I've always thought he has everything already clear, in his mind. It's just about, now we start. No, you have to pay respect to the moment and to all the other people who are there with you.
Okay, we'll go back to that.
Yeah.
Our next guest is Fernanda Valadez. She's from Mexico. The film that she has in this festival is called Sujo. And it won the International Prize in Sundance Film Festival. She was here in 2020 with another film that is called Sin Señas Particulares. Of course, in the films of Fernanda, they are super real because your films are, or at least how I perceive it from this part of the world. Correct me, please, if I am wrong. You don't interfere that much with the reality of your characters, with the villages that you portrayed. All your characters feel very real, and the people and the stories, it feels almost, I know it's not, but it feels almost as a documentary. So, and you started as a documentary filmmaker, right?
I produced a couple of documentaries, but I didn't direct documentaries until recently a documentary series, but I will talk a little bit about that.
Please.
I think in Mexico, at least in the place where I come from, we didn't have a theater. We had only a film club, the University Film Club, which was amazing, but they only screened a couple of weeks a year. So I think my fascination for film comes from that absence of theater, because that was absolutely special. We would have to travel an hour away to go to a film theater. And when I finally got into a film school, I was lucky enough to have a team or to make a team with some filmmakers, even though I applied to film school kind of late when I was in my mid-20s. And I met some colleagues from another public school, and we very soon realized that in an industry that wasn't so open to female filmmakers at that point, it would be better if we had a company with which we could produce our own projects, and that's what we began to do. So I produced what Astrid Rondero, it's my partner, directed, and she produced what I directed, and we produced for some other filmmakers. I think deep down I identify myself more as a fiction filmmaker, and also because in Mexico reality is so complicated. I think I'm thrown to tell stories about reality, but there are some aspects of that reality where you cannot go as a documentarist regarding violence, because that's a secret between a victim and a perpetrator. There's a point in which you cannot enter because otherwise you couldn't be able to come back. And that's why fiction allows us to go there in a safe manner. But for us, the work done by journalists, by documentarists is really important. In that what you say, that you don't want that to feel phony or unreal or unbelievable. So we I think, both, and I speak in plural because this film, Sujo, it's a co-direction between Astrid and myself. I'm actually the secondary director because the story comes from Astrid. But in reality, we are together working from the script. But we try to observe a lot, to listen to people, to listen to their testimonies, and then we do intervene into reality, but with that observation and with that research first. We built a lot of our locations so we can light with natural light. We build the windows, for example, in Sujo. So I hate when it feels like you have a electric light coming from the windows and then you're talking about the rural reality, and of course rural reality doesn't look like there's a big cinematic light just outside. So we do that. We begin from observation, but we rebuild so we can tell a fictional story. So that's, I think, how...
And you also work with non-professional actors, right?
We work in a mix. In Sujo, the protagonist, I wouldn't call him now, Juan Jesus Varela, a non-professional actor because we worked with him before when he was very young. He was 14, 15. But from then on, that was in 2018, I think he found his vocation, his calling in life. So he began making castings for short films and music films in Guanajuato, and then he had a small part in an Amate Escalante film, which is a very renowned filmmaker. And now in Sujo, he had his first protagonic main character project. So it's a professional actor that didn't go to school, but we casted around him, and the rest of the actors are indeed non-professional.
Okay. Everything feels so real. I'm looking for Anna's last name because it's not that easy to retain.
No, it's a difficult one in Spanish.
Okay, Anna is from Holland, yeah. And she has a film here in International Panorama that is called Rocco Sjuul.
Sjuul, yeah.
And Anna has a long career in Holland. She's done a couple of really good children's films, which is, I have to tell you that in Holland, they have a big tradition between Holland and Germany to do films for young audiences. And we also have, it's something that we have spoken in the festival, because we realize that sometimes we are neglecting our young audiences and they are only watching, excuse me, American films. And then if you don't, if people don't get used to watch his stories from your own country, for your own reality, different ones than Disney, then we create like a Disneyization of, children. So I think this is very interesting that you have this agreement between Germany and Holland, because like I remember we have like this beautiful film when I was like programming another festival about a bird. It was one of the most beautiful Dutch films that made it to the Oscars, or shortly, I'm talking about 20 years ago. So we tried to copy that system, but we never managed to copy that system.
No.
But please tell us a little bit about your career, and then we talk about how do you start to become a filmmaker and all that.
Well, my parents are both teachers, and I had a lot of literature and theater in my youth. and I really liked it. So I read a lot, and I was in a theater school for children. We had a great tradition of children theater and stories for children. It was run by a man, but he was a feminist, I think. He still is. And he always told us that you have to follow your dreams, that just try and fail and stand up again and try again. And he was working with us not on a children level, but just like he would work with adults. So he was not teaching theater to children, he was just working with us as if we were colleagues, or as if I was 8 and then we read Antigone, and talked about what the writer tried to tell, or he could perfectly find themes that were interesting for you when you were 11 or 14, but that tradition also a little bit failed in Holland at the moment, I think, because all the theater courses for children now are only, do you want to become famous?
Oh, no.
Okay, how can you do that for Instagram? Or it's really a shame, I think, because we were much better during the 80s or 90s, I think. But then I went to theater school because I was always directing children at the playground because I like people, I think, and laughing, for me, humor is really important in what I make. I come from there was quite a difficult home situation. My brother is disabled. There was also always a big sadness in our family. So I think in my work, I'm not afraid of entertainment, of just making all the sad situations, there's always a bright side or a lighter side, I think. But then I went to theater school in Maastricht. It was really in the middle of the Me Too period, so all the teachers having affairs with students, but I was a little bit older than, I was not 18, but 22 or something. So I managed to make it without, I tried to ask some critical questions about the system. It was not, they didn't like that. So I was a little bit an outsider there, and I once asked my mother, I was really disappointed about the system, and I asked, Mom, all the teachers are having affairs. And my mother told me, well, okay, stop complaining about it, start an affair as well, and then it will help your career, or just say, no, I'm going to do this by myself, and then it will be difficult, harder, and all the stuff, but you can do it, try. Well, I think that's quite a good advice. And then at theater school, it was a great time because the directing class and the acting class worked together a lot. So I was in a class with a whole generation of new actors, 10 per year or something, and we just for all nights, we just tried to make scenes, to talk about acting, what we think was interesting. And I like working with actors the most and telling stories. I think, what do you want to tell? When I read a script, I immediately know if I'm the one to film it. And I like doing totally different things. So I've done comedies, more dramatic things, a lot of stories for children. And I like to do totally different things. And then when I finished school, I was thinking I would be a theater director, but then I met a famous director in Holland at that moment, also a man, and I really liked what he was making, so I could be his assistant. That was really great. And then I started in film, and I like it more than theater, because in theater you have to let go. Then you have a premiere, and afterwards it's on the actors, and okay, launch it to the world, and it's done. And in film you can, I like creating a world. You can always I don't know, improve or in the edit process. You can, I don't know, fine-tune the acting or the music, and I like that process.
Well, cinema is like a very long process, and sometimes I like to say that you finish the script in the editing room.
Yeah.
And things that were not there in the beginning, all of a sudden, because cinema is alive and people are alive and actors are alive and situations are alive. Sometimes like a subplot that you thought it was not important, all of a sudden, because of the situation, it becomes super important. And another thing that you thought it was fundamental to your film, you let it go because it was not that important.
And if you keep your mind open, then that's really great, how you can be surprised in that process. And especially working with children on the set, it's the same. Children, you have to have an open mind to work with them, because they just give you presence if you're not controlling them too much in the acting. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, our next guest is from Colombia. Her name is Nina Marin. Her film is a first feature, and it's called Tierra Quebrá, Broken Land, and black and white, and it's, of course, it's very easy. You know, I try to avoid this, and you're gonna hate me, Nina, but you know, because in the description of the film, which of course I've watched, it's very easy always that you have a Colombian person to talk about magic realism. But it is true that the film deals with that. You know, it's reality, but shown through special eyes of the characters and that time. And I think it's the mixture of reality, fantasy, witchcraft, somehow, brujeria. I think those you managed really well to mix, reality with this, sort of like magic world, So let us know how did you become interested? Because you were doing shorts and documentaries before. Please tell us a little bit about how you started.
Yo vengo del teatro.
Okay, también.
Well, I come from the theater world. I used to be also a lawyer, and among my legal classes, I also did drama. And I used to write since I was a child. I am sort of a compulsive writer. I've always felt the need of portraying the atmosphere surrounding me. And when it comes to magic realism, I think it is true. Sometimes this is taken sort of lightly when we are talking about it in the film industry. Sometimes this is not very well understood. And the fact that I was immersed in that universe allowed me to understand that magic is a collective thing that is transformed into the reality of a small territory, and everyone understands this as the reality. And this is something that happens to me even. I'm always thinking, creating a construction around myself, a fantasy around myself. And creating an atmosphere is something that really interests me. The creation of characters that are sort of ghostly, that when I am writing, I feel I'm being possessed by these characters. I even get to see them when I am writing and when I am building that sort of magic that I want to appropriate for myself and that I want to turn into a reality. So I am interested in this, and I am not ashamed to say that in my films there is some theater, some drama. I'm pushing cinema towards poetry because I think it's really cool to have reality, and to tell reality is something that is really nice, but you have the news for that. And I like documentaries. This is reality, but my path, my search is a different one. My spiritual needs are different from that. And this has brought me to create not a movie, but an atmosphere. And in my view, this movie has not ended. This movie will finish when I die. And what I want to convey is that this valley, this territory that is surrounded by the mountains of Sierra Marta, all this territory that I present sort of incorporates a certain magic that is also enters the characters and deals with this story. And now I'm writing another story, and it is a sort of a big book, a big story that uses the elements of the cinematography, but that are actually just an excuse. I'm more interested in the human beings, as you said, this humanity that goes through us all the time, those topics that go through us all the time, and at the same time to put some magic into this, and not only into the story, into me, into the characters. That would be what I would have to say about my filmmaking.
For me, it's something that I always ask to myself. We always ask each other whenever we are women filmmakers, and it's like, do you believe that the first thing that makes your film different or that gives the personality of your film is because you are a female? In other words, my film is different from yours because I come from a different background, from a different country, from a different language, blah, 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 blah. But is the fact of a film made by a woman something that connects the film with other women, or that's not the case? What is your intake on that? I don't have the answer, It's something that we're always wondering.
So can you repeat it
again?
Yes,
the question is just the fact that because your film or your story has been directed by a woman or told through the eyes of a woman, is that the main component of the film or your main difference from a film made by a man? Or do you think that there are other things like your cultural background, your nationality, your language, blah, 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 blah? Do you think it's a mixture of everything? Just the fact that you're a woman does not make you different in terms of the stories that you're telling from a man?
Well, I would think, I make very personal films, I'm a woman, so I'm not a man, so I don't know how a man views the world. As a filmmaker, I'm sure I have this special female or subtle eye on things. I don't know if this is a women's characteristic. I don't know. It's maybe one of my characteristics, As a viewer, though, I have seen, and probably more films made by men than by women, I would think. I was deeply touched by a lot of films made by men. So, it's difficult. What is it then that touched me so deeply? Is it this sensitivity I recognize, or the poetry? So it's very difficult for me to answer this question. But I think my view, and I've I understood by how people treated me as a filmmaker. Often it's interesting because they undervalue you, they underestimate you, I have to tell you, when I'm making documentaries, I do the camera. I do the directing, I do the camera. And so I arrive with my camera and people think, maybe she can't even operate the camera. Or so sometimes I've noticed that, but this is a good thing for me, because then I can surprise them. They belittle me, but then it gives me more freedom in dealing with protagonists.
Because you think the fact that you're a woman does not make you seem so authoritarian.
Exactly, yeah, and maybe also the way I'm dealing with technology. I reduce technology to a minimum, and I would never intimidate people with my technology. Technology is something you have to use, of course, but it shouldn't dominate the atmosphere. So it's a side issue. You have to know how it works and how to operate it, but it shouldn't change the atmosphere. So this is one thing, and I think my dealing with technology is maybe the one of a woman. You know, I'm not so keen on the latest camera, on the it is not really, you know, it's not nothing
on the
that
little toys, on the little toys.
little toys that I don't go through catalogs, and man, this is also, you know, it's not true what I say, but it is true that I'm not interested, and maybe it's a prejudice if I say men are more interested into this they are more into this technology stuff. And I think that conveys, you know, my natural or simple behavior with the technology, with the whole, that gives the protagonist, you know, a relaxed atmosphere. And this is something female. Is that
Somehow, well, I don't, you know,
answer to your question?
I don't really have the answer because this is something that we always debate. Is there a female way to do films? Is there a female way to portray things? Should a person that watch a film recognize that there is a female behind, or shouldn't? This is a question that we always ask. I obviously don't have the answer. And for me, that's not, you know, I think but that's my opinion, you know. Yours can be totally different and equally valid you know, it's just an opinion. But I think that, as you said before, films are very personal. And of course, you are a female, you are from Austria, you were born in Innsbruck, Salzburg, blah, blah, blah. You had a family this way, you were raised this way. All these things become you, and you is what you try to put in your films, you know? Mm-hmm. I guess if we were dealing with Hollywood filmmakers, maybe it's very different, you know, that you get a script from someone that you don't have any personal connection, but I believe that most of the people that are in this, you know, panel, we all do personal films, even if we have not written them, but it's something that we connect with. Fernanda, your films are also very personal, so from a specific area in Mexico. So,
I do think there's still a difference. I think both in the way we look and in the making. It's not necessary so, but I'm going to tell a little story before. I think I have two first features because Astrid and I work producing for each other, then we co-directed. I feel her first feature as a director, it's also mine because I produced it and was involved in the script writing. And that film that was about being a woman in the border with the United States, I think for all of us who made that film as a generation, at that time, very young female filmmakers in Mexico, we felt like we're making a stand of who we are and what kind of films and what kind of stories we want to tell. And it was in a pre-Me Too era. We shot it in 2015. And when we were editing that film around 2016, and some colleagues had some comments, male colleagues, like, no one's going to care about a story of a woman without makeup and just with her hair tousled. And I mean, we were so thrown back that still at that point, when the story tackled those issues, it was so different, the reaction from women than from men, particularly if they were heterosexual men. So I would say, yes, there's a difference that's becoming narrower, that's becoming less important, but it's still there. Someone told us that film, it's hateful towards men. And say, of course not. We're just signaling the violences of micro gender violence. So there's that. Then with identifying features, which was my first feature as a director, which is more socially oriented, less about our experience as women in the industry. But it's also the story of a woman, a mother looking for her missing son. And I remember that also another friend told us the interesting story is that of the son, not of the mother, a middle-aged woman. And we say, well, thank you for your comment, but we do care about the story of the woman, and we're going to tell this movie. And so, of course, there's this difference of perception who is the protagonist in life. And I do think that younger people are feeling now different towards this, that younger people, particularly younger women, do feel like middle-aged women can be the protagonist of a film, can be the protagonist of a life, a protagonist period. But that wasn't the case 10 years ago. And we still have so much to work on. And of course our films doesn't have to become explicitly political or gender oriented in that terms. We tell the stories we care about, that we're passionate about. But as we are there, I think still as this minority, female minority who is in reality the majority of the population, we are without intending or intending, but without doing so in a didactical, in a
didactic way?
Demonstrative way. Mm-hmm. In any case, we're changing that. And then just to finish the comment, we are of course entitled to talk about different things, not only women, but from a female perspective about reality in general. And I think we wanted to do that with Sujo, with our latest film, to talk about how a boy's personality is built, how masculinity is built through the eyes of ourselves and the female characters in our film. So for us, it's quite political. It's quite, I think, important. And also in the way we do the films, we always feel like we have to have female photographers, female sound recordists, because this is not going to change unless we change it. But it's going to become less relevant as we change that reality, and hopefully there will be a time where gender won't be as noticeable and important as it is still.
You just tackled my third question. We'll go back to that. But it's good what you talk about, because the film of Anna, Rocco and Sjuul, it's the main, is a lady that is, what is she, 70 years old or something?
In her 70s, yes.
In her 70s, and I think that the beauty of that film, first of all, that I believe everything that happens in the film. Of course, I know Dutch, society, but I think it's very, the portrait that you do of a 70-year-old woman, I think is fantastic. 70s are the new 20s. Not really bad, so that's a bit too much. But it's, because we're always with this narrative. No, an old lady, blah, blah, blah. No. Your old lady is beginning a new, beautiful part of her life, So, well, we go back to the question, which is if there is a difference.
It's difficult, I think. I know a lot of men who have female characteristics, and also a lot of, otherwise. So I think there are some some subjects who are, they are seen as female subjects. So in Holland, the situation is different, because we have still a lot of gender issues to be solved, but we already have a lot of female directors, and a lot of female writers, not a lot of technical crew. They are mostly men. But I think the sexism in Holland is in the fact that there are some subjects, and if you make a film about that subject, then females come in. So children, raising child, relationships, education. So if you want to make a good action film about war, well, then all the men are, then, yeah, they have the biggest chance to finance the project. And I think that's wrong, because why can I make a film about war? Maybe it's quite refreshing to not have to, not all the action is really interesting, but the psychological side of a war. And we had the same with this film, Rocco Sjuul. Of course, there were men and women who said, well, it's not my movie, it's not my subject, I'm not so interested in feelings of women in their 70s. Well, perfectly fine. I hate horror movies. Well, but they can be really fantastic. It's just not my taste. And I think, but the male taste is in, well, Tamara wrote the scenario. We're always surprised that if you have a really good script for a children movie, it's quite difficult to find a really good DOP, because films for children, they're not sexy. And that's strange, because it's the best part of our industry. They travel the most, it's where we are the most, we know a lot about children psychology. So, but, well, if they have the choice, they would make an action movie. Yeah.
Yeah, but totally agree with what you said. You know, I have experienced that also.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
yeah.
In your case, Nina, en tu caso, ¿te parece que?
Do you think that being a woman makes your films different, or are there certain differences related to the fact that you're a woman? Is this a more important characteristic compared to the fact that you're Colombian or from the region that you come from? Well, right now I don't really know how to answer that question, because in the past I sent a script on a feature film, and they answered me thinking that I was a man, and they were surprised by the fact that I was a woman. I don't feel that I create from my point of view as a woman. I think that we are women. We have this femininity, this sensitivity. It is within us. It is there. It is present. But at the same time, it is strength, what we have within us. I am the fourth of 5, 3 men before me. I grew up surrounded or dominated, so to speak, in a space dominated by men. And I think that male strength has always been present, and it is related in my case to survival, to raising my voice, to showing a gaze, and I've had to pull some weeds, so to speak, so that other things could blossom. But I don't really create from this space of need. I create from me being a human being with needs, with wishes, and I think that this female gaze is there. It is obvious. As some people say, it is delicate, sensitive, but it also has strength and masculinity. It is a dual nature that is associated to humankind. And from there, I think I create. And I think it also has to do with perception. I am interested by spectators, by the audience? How can I open up a relationship, a communication with the audience, common grounds? It can be a 70-year-old woman, a middle-aged woman, a girl, Emilia, a friend, an old friend, a sort of atmosphere that is associated to this narrative. But as a girl, the conversations among women were there and on a daily basis with regard to profession, survival, this rural surrounding. The need of women to generate their own gaze within this sexist environment, because it is a male sexist environment. But at the same time, as women, we have a natural gaze and we focus on human needs more than anything. Well, that's great. When I saw your film, considering that I'm from a different culture, but I thought that story had been told by many men, but I'd never seen it told by a woman. That girl that listens to the stories told by the mother or the grandmother. How do girls view men? And I'd always seen it from the other side, but I have the feeling that it is the first time that I see it from this point of view, how women observe men, how they observe each other as women. I think that funding films has a strong impact on contents.
The way of financing films has a really big impact on the content. In places where it's easier to get access because there are female quotas, blah, 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 it's easier for females to tell certain stories. We know that in places where the education of female technicians is implemented, we know that female technicians bloom. Sometimes I think that we don't pay much attention, and the minute you start offering that to, in cinema schools, blah, 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 then you realize that, like in the last 10 years, for instance, in this country, I'm talking about my experience, that a lot of these female quotas for technical parts were offered, like all of a sudden there are 10 amazing female DPs. Than 20 years ago, when I started, there was none. There were two, and super old school. Now, and I'm sure that in 5 years, it's going to be not only DPs, but also female that are like one of the best females in visual effects now, one of the best technician in visual effects that is doing like Game of fucking Thrones. All the ice thing, the VFX supervisor, the ice part was done by a female. So what I'm saying is that, as going back to my question, I have to go step backwards. How do you feel about, do you think it's necessary, you don't think it's necessary? One thing, like to have females in position, to have women in position where you can decide which kind of films are being made, and that applies for cinema institutes, the places where like TV stations where they pre-buy your content, and also how do you feel about the need of having quotas and implementing, that women can become technicians and give access or ideas to maybe young girls that are thinking, well, I don't know if I'm going to be good with visual effects, blah, 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 or I don't know if I'm going to be good with camera, or, I'm just going to be like a production assistant. How do you feel about that? Do you think we have to push it, or we have to let it flow? Let it go, let it flow.
Well, does anybody want to start? Because, in documentaries, or at least how I see it, is my
because
case
do you edit?
Yeah.
Do you edit your own material?
No. I'm lucky enough when with my companion and a partner we form like a unity, and so all from writing, directing, and camera mostly is my job. And then everything from editing onwards, post-production, and so is his job. But we do, I checking what he's doing, and so, and I think we do together the editing. But a quota, but wouldn't make. But we have each other, That's where we're a little unit. And we have been working like that for a long time. That enabled me to, or us, to make films with a very low budget, because film funding in Austria is not only Vienna, but it also has the regional institutes, the city, the capital of the region, and the region itself. So it breaks down into little units. Even the film funds break down in units, and so we were always able to get a lot out of the little money we had, and that was thanks to our very low budget, simple team. Okay. This is what I can say.
Okay, because as Anna was saying before, I think that if at least I can speak for what I know, which is Spain and maybe France, but like if you look at the budget of the films, like it's very difficult. It's moving, it's improving, but usually female films are the ones with the lowest budget.
But
I'm talking about no, that's what I'm saying. It's changing. Like 20 years ago, it was terrible.
Yeah.
Now, little by little, it's starting to change. But again, my opinion is that we cannot fall asleep into that. We have to be really reclaiming our budgets and our, share of the pie.
Yes, but I think female directors or female filmmakers have an own responsibility in this, because I think when you ask a man, okay, here's this project, it's a really big project and the expectations are very high, are you going to do it? Then a man will say, okay, let's jump. And I think most women will think, oh, well, maybe it's too early, maybe I can do this in 3 years, because we are used to knowing that we can do it, that we're really sure about the fact we can do it. And that's why I think we have to encourage girls just to jump and try it. And then sometimes you fail. Well, then you stand up again and try again. And I think we teach really young boys to do that, and little girls just to be nice to other people, not to be too ambitious.
Yeah.
Sometimes men tell me you're ambitious, and then I said, yeah, what's wrong with that? Can I be ambitious? Yeah. Or is it really hard for you to work so hard with your children? Implicitly, they say you're not a good mother, and that's the problems we have to change. I think, yeah. And because we have a lot of female directors in Holland, it's also a problem that the generation above me, we have to change our ideas about leadership, I think. Because I saw women change in men, in what they thought good leadership would be. When I started 15 years ago, I'm quite a sensitive person. I think I like to, in my work, I like to, so that's really bad English, but I jump. I like to doubt about things. I'm never sure about a scene. Sometimes you're on a set and then you think, it's not working like I thought it would work. Well, it's very brave to tell your crew, I don't know. Just give me a break, then we're going to discuss why isn't it working. And when I was for 2 years, I was assistant mainly by men directors, and then you had then you're further away from the set, and then I was looking at what they were doing, and I thought, you don't have a clue what you're doing right now, but you go straight ahead, and when you're in the edit, you think, fuck what I've done. And then they told me in the beginning, but maybe you're too sensitive, and now 50 years later, sometimes after discussion, maybe you're a little bit dominant. And I didn't change. But the whole surrounding changed, and the ideas about leadership changed. Well,
I think that's a very interesting, reflection on how it is, because it seems that there is only one way to be a leader. There are many ways that you can, become a leader, but we only have the typical model of...
And it's also difficult for men, because there are a lot of men who are also struggling with this dominant male strength way of leadership. Not all men are like that. So it's also very difficult for them, and that's with DOPs. They have to manage a whole crew. I've seen a lot of very talented, intuitive DOPs, and they failed because the team wasn't taking their leadership, and that's wrong, I think, because there's also a place for sensitive people, leadership.
No, totally. I have to say that in all the years that I've been involved in cinema, since 1999, 25 years, I have seen a very refreshing and positive change in male leadership. Yeah. Like people that are under 30, male under 30, they don't have the problem accepting, orders, or I don't like the word orders, or, accepting the command of a woman. They are also able to do their thing, to be leaders in a different way. So, I think we're building a more fair and, peaceful, sort of less stressful testosterone work environment. I think I see the change little by little, but I think the change is happening.
And it's not always male or female, because your question about the people who make the decisions about what projects are funded, it's also, I've seen a lot of women in those decision structures, but they think in a male way. And then females can be your enemy in just the same way as men do.
Well, first of all, totally. But we're trying to build a society where enemies is not the issue. It's possibilities and difference, and how we integrate different ways of being a leader, different visions of the world. Yeah. Of course, there is not a simple male, women. There is many other things that play part. Fernanda, please tell us.
No, I think affirmative action is important. I've experienced it in my case as a woman, as a lesbian, as a Latin American. When you are not thought of the obvious option, it makes a difference. And I think it's still relevant, and furthermore so in indigenous people, transgender people, and still female, particularly from an adverse background. And I think affirmative action from institution is important, but also from ourselves. And I do think, even though it sounds a little bit cliche, but I do think of ourselves as a means to change, to hire, when you get the chance, a female DP, a female technician, and like you say, you find out that sometimes a female DP doesn't work well with a very masculine, traditional male crew. So in our films, we got that experience, our first film, that it's not that they were mean or cruel or enemies, but the technicians were not used to working with women and LGBTQ people. So we had misunderstanding, like, but now why this lady is going to tell me what to do, or this faggot. We understood that there's sensibilization that we need to do with our crew in general, and we needed to cast our crew so the working environment wasn't violent and was harmonic, and we could work in a less vertical way and a little bit more horizontal. But it requires understanding that and try to assimilate that, I think, into your production way of working.
Nina?
Yo creo que en el proceso, por ejemplo, yo también.
I've been working for 20 years in the film industry and exploring with the short films. And when I got to the featured films, this had been a process, and I already understood the type of teams that I wanted to have around me. And this was like doing this research of the whole crew. And I even did castings to the members of the crew. And this was not only about them being the best man or woman for the job, but what type of human being is going to be working with me, what type of person this is, how do they handle working under pressure. Because we are thinking of the film, and the spirit of the film needs to remain, and me as the movie maker need to protect it from everything, and I need to have a producer that is aligned with me and to create an harmonious environment. So we started creating this crew, building this crew made of women and men. I've always had an issue with the photography directors, because sometimes they are like movie makers in hiding. So the fact that they're using the camera and operating the camera gives them a sort of power above everyone else. And sometimes there were these clashes, and you needed to reflect on all that was happening. So finally I understood that I needed to find somebody with whom I could really connect, because it was a matter of connection, and we're dealing with human beings at the end of the day. So we tried to create this harmonious environment, and whatever we saw was not working, we really need to be clear about it and say that this was not working, and that our job was to protect the movie. Once that the crew was ready, I asked everyone to roll up their sleeves to make this movie work. And there are certain subtleties that within the set that, for instance, you realize that in a subtle way the director of photography wants to impose their gaze, and you need to be very clear and to say that you need to protect this gaze that you want to keep. And this is also about our quality of human beings, and realize that we want to protect that and realize what's important in the movie. This way of working has worked very well in the second movie. The main word is caring, to care for the spirit of the movie, and to realize and make a choice about the human beings that are going to be around this movie. And I think that these also entail positive things when it comes to production, and this has an impact in terms of the budget, in terms of the calls that we respond to. And this has made me deal with this not only from the perspective of me being a woman, but also from the perspective of a person living in a territory that is far removed, and to make to show that there is many things that need to be adapted to the context, to the process that we are going through. And it is a difficult task, and I have to fight with different things because it is true. The fact that I am a woman sometimes generates certain resistance from the part of men. And now I am aware of this fact, and I need to assess the way I can handle this. But it was even more difficult to have to deal with the regional aspect and the territorial aspect, if you wish. It is something that is also human. Sometimes people think that since you come from this specific region, you are not going to be able to do this. So you need to fight with many things at different levels. I think that we're going to open the floor for the Q&A, but I think that Anna said something that was very interesting.
Or that I also had it in my questions, which is that sometimes we are, I don't know if it's obviously because of the tradition, education, but because we don't have enough models, whatever, but sometimes I think that women, we self-repress ourselves and we lack ambition, which is something that I'm very glad to say that in the latest generations, I'm seeing a huge change in that. It's not the same the people of my age, than the students that I have that now are in their 30s, in their 20s. I see a complete different change, generational change, talking about English, broken English. So for me it's very refreshing to see that this sort of don't be too ambitious, don't be too smart, don't be too fast, it's completely changing. So I don't know if you have experienced that, what's your intake on this?
Well, maybe I could talk about my children. I could talk about my daughter. She's 16 years old. And as a 16-year-old, or even the one that is 13 years old, when I compare myself, when I was 16 or 13, there was, the discussions they have, Eleonora, she was 10 years old. She came to me and said, Mommy, I think I kissed my companion, my girlfriend. They had an overnight thing at our house and they kissed, and she said, Mama, I think I'm lesbian. I said, don't worry, don't, just take it easy, just, I would have never done that. It was, no way I could have done it. No way I could have talked to my mom about it. So it's, if you compare it, this is a similar, it has to do with this, this generation is coming, has a different attitude, or Camilla, she's 16, she said, no, I'm not interested in men now, I don't have to take the pill because, I thought, okay, now she has got her menstruation, I have to make sure, that we're safe. And she said, no, don't worry, Mommy, I'm not interested, I won't have sex now, I'm not interested. And she, the way she deals with her friends, with her girlfriends, it's amazing, I never had that. I was thought, no, I have to have my first boyfriend, and it didn't happen, and I was depressed. Camilla is depressed about something else, not about, boyfriend or not boyfriend. She has a channel to talk about it with me. So maybe, I'm not like my mom, and she's not like me as a daughter.
I think, of course, I notice in younger people an attitude, younger girls, not to be afraid, not to feel shy about what they want, and that, of course, is amazing. But I also, and I do hope for them, for both girls and boys and people who don't identify as gender defined, that what we as women have learned that we can share from our generation is that it's not that girls have to become dominant. is that we can find as a society a gentler way, like you say, a different way of experiencing life, also a different way of experiencing gender. And I have several students who, like your daughter, they experiment in their sexual identity, but also in their gender identity. And I think that's really amazing, not to be so defined about the roles that society imprints in you, and to be more free, to be more fluid, to be more able to enjoy life, but also to be more gentle, that authority doesn't have to be violent, that the film industry doesn't have to be violent. And also in the way of working in this industry, also like you said, Anna, you don't have to know everything. You can discuss, you can receive comments from your crew, and also to recognize that a film, it's a co-authorship in its essence. So of course we are here 5 directors, but we're just a part of a machinery, or perhaps more of an animal, that it's a team with the objective of doing something. So I do hope that, of course, we hope for girls to be clear about what they want, but not to become or not to claim what masculinity has done in the past.
Yeah, I completely agree. And but it's really frightening that the world is full with masculine traditional leadership at the moment. So let's hope. Yeah.
Yeah, we just have an example from yesterday.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah. And then when it starts all over again, I think. I've seen a change as well. I'm a little bit afraid of social media, I have to say. So I see girls speaking out and being very, well, they can find their words very easily, and they know how to present themselves. But social media, I think it's a real big danger that it's all about success. And I think, yeah. And I see that a lot with people in their 20s who I have on the set. It's very big mouth, with a lot of self-esteem, but when something happening that they didn't expect, then they immediately quit. And crash all over, and then, well, I don't think that's emancipatie. Sorry, I'm a little bit tired, so my English is really going. Yeah.
Nina, I think we have Nina, and then if somebody has questions, we have like 10 minutes.
Si hay un cambio.
If there is a change, yes, but I have to agree. Sometimes I have my doubts about this change. I would talk more about a transition than a change. I think that we are undergoing a process, and the ones who are sacrificing themselves are the younger people. We are trying to understand what's going on. They are trying to understand this. And they will reach a moment where they will be mature, and we will reach to an understanding. But I think that we have raised the awareness that they are awakening to this, but I don't think that we are facing this in the way that we should. I have 3 children, 14, 9 years old. 3 of them are boys, and I find things in them that really make me take a breather to try and think the best way of teaching them, because I'm also learning from them in this process. I'm also learning things from them, and I see this with my children, with their friends. I think that there is a sort of exposure, And the question is, how are we dealing with this exposure? How are we dealing with this, all this information that we receive, and this resilience in boys and girls that are facing such a big change, and maybe they have not taken the time to reflect on it, and maybe they're making lightly the decisions that they're making, and maybe we are at this very strange time that is having an impact in the AV sector that is also going through a transition itself, and I think that we need to wait and see what's going to happen. Well, we're here to answer your questions. If you are curious about anything, we know that it is a bit late, but if you have any questions, we will be very happy to answer.
Muy bien, ahí tenemos una mano. Como quieras.
So there's a raised hand there.
Thank you all, because the new generations are changing because of women like you, because you are doing something new, and that is very important, more than you guys maybe can even, understand. And then, because you have already done so many things, so many amazing things, I just want to know, what do you think is the best way? Because I do consider myself a very loud and ambitious and too much kind of woman. And so I just want to, and controversial and whatever you want to call it, but I do want to ask, how do you handle a man-dominated world without being aggressive or being called emotional, or what is the best way of handling that world and going places, because of course things happen and you get mad, so you act and you react and you get aggressive and you cry and you whatever. Maybe that's not the way. Okay, so what is the best way of achieving what you want in a man-dominated world? How do you make yourself? How do you make them listen?
Yeah. I think, well, it's their problem if they call you emotional. It's not my problem. Okay, what's wrong with being emotional if it's not to get the power or from a sick leaderness story? But if you have a point and there's something wrong, sometimes you can be emotional, and then the other one has to handle with it. And I know a lot of men being emotional all the time.
Así es.
Yeah, I know. I have 2 children. I've always worked full time, and now suddenly I have a lot of male colleagues, and they have their daddy's day. And then I have to work harder because they have their daddy day. Well, that makes me really angry. And I tell them, well, it's perfectly fine that you have your daddy day, but in the past 15 years, it was one big mommy day. So, yeah, solve the problem. Tell your producer you want to work 4 days. It's perfectly fine, but it's not an excuse, because I can't use it as an excuse either. So just be yourself, I think, and have and be gentle with other people. People can make, if you permit yourself to make mistakes, then anyone in a crew could have a wrong day or something. So I think, but some people find it difficult to work with me because I always want an honest discussion. And when something went wrong, sometimes male think, yeah, but do we have to talk about what went wrong? And then I think, yeah, but you don't have to make excuses. We just have to find out why it went wrong, because maybe then we can repair it. But they can also say to me, this is not the way, or let's think this over. Well, perfectly fine, then we do. Yeah, that's my answer.
And perhaps what I could add is to find the people you love to work with.
Yeah.
And it's because with that people you can be yourself. You can find a way of working in a different manner.
Yeah, and also accept the fact that there are crews where you cannot work with. Exactly. And it's also okay, and it's not your failure. It's just, the whole world is better if you're surrounded by people who understand each other and still have respect for the people you're not really understanding, and then can make beautiful things as well. Yeah.
And also, there is nothing wrong if, we are not heroes, we are not perfect. We have a bad day, and we can be, excuse my French, we can be a bitch also because we have a bad day, because things are not. But, be honest, apologize, and, let's, as Fernanda said before, we are in an orchestra, so the violin has to be tuned in order to listen to the clarinet. We are all working for a common purpose, and it's I think honesty and care, to be gentle is the best recipe. I think we need to stop now,
listos.
but we finish with Nina, and unless you have something to say, Ella.
También va a pasar que también va.
It will happen that you do not really get along with, and sometimes things go down to transactions. Everything is summarized in how you communicate, what sort of transactions you can make, and what attitude you can have, because sometimes everyone can have a bad day, and you just take a breather, and this is a balance of the highs and the lows. So you can accept that somebody has a bad day, and then the next day it might be your bad day, and that is life. That's what life is about. And it's true. We've been criticized for being who we are. Sometimes can call you a yeller, and yes, and you can say, yes, I yell, I shout, and so what? Everything has a room. You just need to be calm, have this peaceful attitude, and just deal with it. Well, I want to thank you all for being here, and to clarify that there are no enemies here. I would like to say that what really matters is that we go and watch the films, that you can actually discover these little treasures made by men, made by women. And if cats start directing movies, that's fine too. But you need to try and find what's not so obvious. Not everything is about superheroes. Let's discover the stories that other women, other men can tell us. And you have this wonderful program of movies. So Ella, Fernanda, and Nina, they've made wonderful movies, so I think that you can still go and see them. Thank you very much, everyone.